Across the nation, aircraft of 5 struck airlines fly for the first time in 43 days, ending the country's longest and most expensive airline strike. The 5 carriers handle 60% of all domestic passenger traffic. Machinists voted to accept a new 3-year contract. The grounded planes were maintained during the strike by executive personnel. Airports from coast to coast come to life again as the 5 airlines swing into operation. Affected were TWA, Eastern, National, United, and Northwest. The settlement follows a 2-to-1 acceptance vote by the machinists for a new $87 million contract, which includes a cost of living clause and a stepped-up schedule of pay increases. A routine liftoff signals air travel back to normal. President Johnson, in a whirlwind tour, swings through New York State and New England in a 3-day journey. The trip is called non-political, although the president appears in regions where freshman Democratic congressmen are up for re-election. In Buffalo, huge crowds turn out for the presidential party. The chief executive touches on urban themes in his speeches, including a matter of great local concern, pollution. A sample of sludge taken from the bottom of the Buffalo River, where it empties into Lake Erie, is examined. The president states that through the combined efforts of federal, state, and local governments, we can have a Lake Erie where people can swim and fish and sail. In Syracuse, other enthusiastic crowds greet Mr. Johnson. Here, the president describes as shameful the exploitation of the poor by slum landlords. He announces that he intends to take the profit out of poverty. Increased legal centers under the poverty program are planned to help tenants obtain better housing. Ellenville, New York, a small Catskill community where a new $2 million hospital is dedicated by the president. And he is given an honorary Doctor of Civil Laws degree at the University of Rhode Island in Kingston. Here, his speech includes a warning on demonstrations which lead to violence. On to Vermont, where the president turns his attention to conservation, discussing the delicate balance between urban development and the preservation of open spaces, countryside, and vacation lands for future generations of Americans. At Portland, Maine, Mr. Johnson boards the Northampton, a guided missile cruiser, which would house him at sea in case of any future nuclear attack. Campobello Island, New Brunswick, is the overnight destination. Next morning, the presidential helicopter leaves the deck of the Northampton, taking Mr. Johnson to Campobello and a meeting with Canadian Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson. This is the 6th meeting between the two leaders since Mr. Johnson became president. It is marked with an atmosphere of cordiality, friendliness, and frankness. After 2 hours of talks in Chemcook, New Brunswick, President and Prime Minister returned to Campobello, Franklin D. Roosevelt's summer home for many years. It is here that the cornerstone is placed for a new visitor center near the Roosevelt cottage. The Prime Minister's speech pays tribute to President Roosevelt as President Johnson recalls his devotion to peace. The Johnson-Pearson talks include Vietnam, NATO, African affairs, and economic matters. After this meeting, the president returns to Washington, ending the 3 days of travel and speech-making. In New York, an overflow crowd of soccer fans gathers as Santos of Brazil faces Benfica of Portugal. Portuguese star Eusebio and Brazilian hero Pelé, called the king of soccer, are given an enthusiastic welcome. It's the American debut of both players. This is the first game in a round-robin tournament billed as the United States Cup of Champions. Brazil was defeated by Portugal in this year's World Cup tournament in London. Pelé, number 10, shows his ball handling skill, a talent which earns him a reported $200,000 a year. Pele's 17-year-old protege, Edu, scores for Brazil in the second half. This was one of 2 goals by Edu in the game, and both times Pele gets credit for an assist. There were many brilliant defensive plays during the game, too. For instance, this great save. Even with Eusebio, the World Cup scoring champ, Portugal is not able to mount a sustained offense. A picture-book goal by Brazil's Pele is a masterpiece from 15 feet out. Pele faked both defense and goalie before kicking. Brazil wins 4-0, reversing their World Cup defeat by Portugal and sending the fans into a frenzy of rejoicing.